Welcome to DevOps 2.0, the ultimate JS delivery pipeline. This is a recording of a workshop we gave at the 2021 DevOps JS conference. For your convenience, we split the recording into 9 parts. For all relevant links, timestamps, and more information, see the description box below.
Smoke tests are these kinds of tests that when I was thinking about them, this phrase "plug and pray" came to my mind because the origin of the name smoke tests is kind of leads to that. You might think to yourself, well, what's the origin then? Basically, the name smoke tests come from a very rudimentary method of testing, not software, but hardware. So imagine that you're this inventor and you've come up with this great invention of yours that, let's say, makes coffee twice as fast as any other thing on the market. And you've assembled all the components. This is the coffee maker 3000 or whatnot. And you finally plug it in. So is it good when you see smoke coming out of the damn thing? No, it's not. So this is a very rudimentary way of testing. Before you start pushing buttons and making coffee lightning fast, you need to ensure that there isn't smoke coming out of your thing. So it's the same with software, with apps. Smoke tests are these very rudimentary tests that basically poke your app and see if its basic instincts, if its basic functionality is working. It's done at a bit of a different phase than what well, not exactly on a different phase, because you have to have your coffee maker ready to plug it in, right? And it's similar here. You have to have your app running already to create smoke tests, to run smoke tests on that app. And very often the smoke tests are integration tests. For example, these automated browser tests make for a good smoke test. Just one thing to keep in mind: when you run these smoke tests, make sure not to make them too hard on your app. So for example, if I were to smoke test Buddy, right? I wouldn't want to my automated test, integration test, my smoke test, I wouldn't want it to open the pipelines tab and add 5,000 new pipelines, because this could overload my database. This could create unnecessary traffic. It might turn out that my smoke tests actually create so much traffic that there isn't enough resources left for the actual users of the app. So keep that in mind. Smoke tests, they can be simple but sweet. And let me show you how simple smoke tests can be. Look, there are so many pipelines. I'm going to add yet another one, because why not? I can do that. A smoke test, for example, let's call them smoke tests. I'm going to trigger this manually. A smoke test, it's enough to test if the app is online and if it responds, right? So you could achieve that very simply by using a ping action that will simply ping a host name. Let's use the host name that we have here, right? And we can have a very simple pipeline. I think it's refreshing to see such a simple pipeline. We had like 4 or 5 step pipelines, 7-step pipelines, actions running in parallel, environment variables, conditions, etc. This pipeline, just 1 step. And I think it would be a good idea to run this pipeline recurrently. What it means that it runs in specific time intervals. Again, in Buddy, you have huge flexibility when it comes to defining the time intervals at which the application is going to be run. You can have it run every 5 minutes, every 7 days, whatever. Daily pings sounds okay to me, maybe even more frequent. Let's see if this actually works. I'm going to leave the trigger mode to manual, but remember that you can have such a pipeline run recurrently. So I'm going to save it and I'm going to run it. And let's see. And you can see that it took no time, right? 17.2 milliseconds, and the address with our app, it's responded. So we can assume that it's almost it's there, right? And having such a test running recurrently, great idea. But what if such a test runs, let's say you set it up to run every 12 hours, but you deploy your application more often? Well, you could add an action that that triggers one pipeline, a given set of action in another pipeline finishes running. So you could, for example, have this pipeline, the first one that we created that deployed the application to that very address that we just tested. We could have it deploy the application, and then at the very end, I could add this one more action that's simply, what was its name? Trigger another pipeline. No, run next pipeline. I'm sorry. And here you could even run a pipeline from another project. And here you can define which pipeline should be triggered at the end of this action chain. So I would want the smoke tests pipeline to be triggered. Right. So after all of these actions run, then the one final thing to do for this pipeline is going over to the smoke tests pipeline and run it, and then ping and check whether this address is is reachable. Now, finally, one more thing you could test, and I'm going to just glaze over that, which is SEO, so search engine optimization, all these metrics, all these stats, the way Google sees us, sees our application, very important, not always very, very clear, but there are a few obvious ways, few obvious things we can do to make our application look better to Google. And again, these are actions that are built in to Buddy. You can simply create another pipeline that runs either recurrently or similarly maybe to these smoke tests, that it runs in some specific time intervals and then is triggered by another pipeline. Let me just add these few ideas to this smoke tests pipeline, get this ping action some friends. Right. So first of all, when it comes to SEO, an important thing to check is the Google Lighthouse report. And we have a dedicated action built right into Buddy that allows you to check to get a Lighthouse report for your application. So what you need to do is simply provide the URL at which your application lives. Then you can choose the criteria, whether your app is considered to be a mobile, a desktop, or whether it should work on both on mobile and or desktop. I'm sorry, I'm getting my tongue twisted a bit. So I'm going to choose, maybe since this is a desktop counter, let me choose desktop. And here you can choose the thresholds for when the app, the report is considered to be unfavorable for you, and when this action should fail. So I've tested this counter app before. It easily surpasses these thresholds. So this action is going to run successfully. I know. Let me add it, and we'll see the report later. What else can you do when it comes to SEO? Again, it would be very embarrassing to have any 404s on your website, right? On your application. You've been working on it for so long, and then somebody finally finds it on the web, and it turns out that there are 404s on the first level. Yikes, right? So we have a link validator action. Again, just provide the address where the app lives. You can specify the depths of of how deep the action goes to check for the dead links. There are some other configuration options which you can explore. With our counter app, there isn't really that much to explore in terms of dead links. So let's leave the action with its default config. And you can also check your certificate, whether it's there, whether it's expired. Might be a good idea to run this check. Sorry if I saved that too quickly, but you can see if the certificate you can see if the certificate, not certificate, is valid, whether it's due to expire in the next 7, 14 days, 1 month. So it can give you a heads up when your certificate is about to expire, so that you can take care of that before it actually expires, and you then don't get any penalties in the terms of the way your site is or your app is positioned. So I'm going to save that action. And here, again, these actions, they run very quickly. The Lighthouse report actually takes a few seconds to run from start to finish. But the best setup here, I think, thinking about optimizing the runtime of this pipeline, is having the first action run, and then these three could run in parallel. So if the website is available, if the app is available at the address that we specified, these three actions, they can run in parallel. So our pipeline will handle Lighthouse, link validation, and SSL certificate verification at the same time. Let's run this pipeline and see how our application does in terms of SEO friendliness. You can see that as expected, there's a response from the address, this time 17.7 milliseconds. So if I remember correctly, 5 milliseconds, 0.5 milliseconds slower than before. Unacceptable. And now we have the Lighthouse report is being run, link validation is being done. Again, remember that first run of every pipeline is always a little bit, takes a little bit longer than subsequent runs. Yes, so you can see that the pipeline failed because the link, the certificate verification action, it failed because obviously our app does not have a certificate.